$11. If we get the dollar train going today, we can probably get that total above 3K before the end of the show today. So thank you for that. Please head on over to the link tree that's in my bio. You'll find the link to the Discord. Please consider joining that. You'll also find a link to the Instagram page for the Do Something Tour. Please follow along there. While you're in the link tree, also head over to the Facts HQ. It's the merch store, factsstillmatter.site. Lots of really cool items. The new look and feel to the merch store. You can thank our friend Sam for that. It's become this thing, and it's freaking awesome. So it's hard to believe that we even have this amazing website. So thank you, Sam, for all that, and to Eve as well for getting us started. But check it out. There's a lot of cool new merch that's in the merch store too. Please. Programming note: we'll be ending the stream on YouTube and Twitch around 9 this morning. Some technical stuff that we need to work through, but we'll be back on those platforms again tomorrow. So thank you guys for being here. Discord again. If for some reason the Discord link doesn't work from the link tree, you can either copy it and post it into a browser, or just reach out to one of our amazing moderators and they can help you out. So again, thank you for being here. We have a lot to cover. It's a big news day. I first want to start with this winter storm. So for people who live where we live, like northern New England, the northern plain states, around the Great Lakes, we're kind of used to big snowstorms, but this is a monster, right? And this is a monster for parts of the country that don't get snowstorms like this. So there has been, let's see, governors in New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland have enacted emergency declarations, travel bans, and road restrictions to keep people safe and free up resources. Powerful storms swept into the Northeast. Crazy now. Blizzard conditions, heavy snow, damaging winds, prompting school closures and travel shutdowns from D.C. through southern New England. It's going to miss us. Southern Vermont's going to get hit pretty hard, but it's likely going to miss us, which is, we're good. It's been a wild winter. New York City under its first blizzard warning in nearly a decade, with snow totals already 13 plus inches in parts of NYC, with up to 19 inches in New Jersey, with totals possibly reaching nearly 2 feet in some areas. The storm isn't just heavy snow. Strong winds, gusts of up to 70 miles per hour, are causing dangerous wind chills and reducing visibility to near zero. Widespread travel chaos, thousands of flights canceled across major hubs, JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, Boston, Logan. Tens of thousands more delayed. Commuter rail and transit services suspended in many areas. Cities including New York and states like Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Delaware have declared states of emergency. NYC has imposed a ban on non-essential travel for parts of last night into today, with officials strongly urging residents to stay home. Tune into the show. Hang out with us. Coastal flooding and beach erosion risks are also elevated in low-lying area communities from Delaware through Cape Cod. Hundreds of thousands of people are experiencing power outages due to heavy snow and high winds, downing power lines and trees. The National Weather Service has issued blizzard warnings across a broad swath of the East Coast. Predictions of 1 to 2 feet of snow, near whiteout conditions, and winds strong enough to qualify as a bomb cyclone event. Take it seriously. If you had the opportunity to fill your bathtub, little tip in case you're not accustomed to losing power, fill your tub. At least you can flush your toilet. So please heed the warnings. Don't be a hero. Hopefully you can just hunker down. It's a reminder. We often learn these lessons a little bit too late. Make sure you've got like backup batteries for your phones, your devices. Little tip: if your power goes out for extended time, don't open your fridge, don't open your freezer, little shit like that. So just be safe. So everybody hunker down, be safe, and hopefully you can tune in and we can get you through it together. All right. So I'm not even sure where to start. We'll talk about tariffs. We're gonna talk about what's happening in Mexico. We're going to talk about a few other details and now threats in Iran, all kind of stuff. I first want to talk about, and then we're gonna highlight Madam VP today because she was in fact right about everything, and we can prove it. I want to talk about this interesting little, I'm not even sure it's a controversy, but congratulations, by the way, to the U.S. women and the U.S. men's hockey team for their overtime victories over Canada. And I didn't even realize this. When the men won yesterday, the first time that the U.S. men's Olympic hockey team won the gold medal since Lake Placid. So a long time ago. But there was this picture. This is Kash Patel. Okay? So, in the locker room celebrating. In this picture, I was chugging beers. He's banging on the table, dropping F-bombs, celebrating. And people are like, oh, he's celebrating. Well, of course, this is how stupid our government is, right? they attempted to say that basically this didn't happen. Okay. First, let me just give you a little reminder of some history with Kash Patel. Okay. So he was very critical of previous FBI directors. Here's a case in point.
All their funding. I'm not the defund everything guy. I'm just saying Chris Wray doesn't need a government-funded G5 jet to go to vacation. Maybe we ground that plane. $15,000 every time it takes off. This is odd.
Minimum.
Interesting take from Kash, right? And then there was this famous, and I forgot all about this. He was being grilled during his confirmation hearing. Shout out Peter Welch, one of Vermont's senators, was questioning Mr. Patel in the critique of former FBI Director Chris Wray, which, by the way, I'm totally fine with. I don't give a shit who you are, or using our taxpayer dollars to take vacations. No.
When you were here, you were rightly critical, not here actually, I guess it was on Kash's corner. You were rightly critical of the way that the previous FBI director used the...
Thank you, Swishy Raiders. Hearts in the chat for our Swishy rating friends. Every day they're here for us. Super loyal. Thank you, guys.
The FBI jet. And you said you wanted to ground Chris Wray's private jet travel that he pays for with taxpayer dollars to hop around the country. Let me ask you this. You know, on the weekend of, according to flight tracker data, on the weekend of March 7th, an FBI plane flew round trip from D.C. to Las Vegas, and you attended a UFC fight with Mel Gibson. And I'll show you that. Is that you, and is that true?
Yeah, you want to know the difference? I live in Las Vegas. I'm allowed to go home. I didn't leave a congressional hearing early on an FBI jet to dodge questions.
Right. Then on April 5th, you attended a hockey game in New York City. You don't live there, right?
No, I don't.
By the way, everyday FBI agents who are assigned in Washington don't get to fly home on a private jet.
Well, this is a great point. Do you know why I have to use a private jet? Because Congress made it mandatory.
Here it comes. Yeah. Here it comes.
And April 5th, well, we didn't make it mandatory that you go to UFC games with Mel Gibson.
Are you telling me I can't go home?
You don't live in New York,
You got to use
dumbass.
some judgment here.
So when I'm at home, I can't do what I'm doing when I go home. Everybody else is allowed to go home,
Let me
just not
keep
me.
going. No, I'm glad you go home.
Nice
I love
try.
to go home.
Nice try.
But I don't go home on a private jet. On April 5th,
They're not mandated to do so.
You attended a hockey game in New York City with Wayne Gretzky, and Flight Tracker says the FBI jet took you to and from New York City, where you don't live, right?
That's correct.
And on April 12th, on the following weekend, you attended a UFC a fight in Miami, also on the FBI jet, right?
That's correct.
You don't live there.
So what's the cost to the taxpayer for those 3 flights?
Well, I pay the commercial equivalent per the regs and the law. And so just so you know, when you are comparing me to prior directors...
I asked what the cost was, and you don't know. I take it.
Yeah, and what I've done with the use of the private jet is use Andrews Air Force Base versus Reagan National as what the what the others have done to save the taxpayer dollars.
Bottom line here, you flew home to Las Vegas. There's nobody else in the FBI who gets paid. They have to pay their own way if they want to go home, right? I mean, right?
Well, that's not accurate. Depending on where you're stationed, the FBI covers the bill to get home.
So are you telling me that FBI agents who are assigned in Washington, but who may live in Charlotte, they get paid by the FBI?
Sometimes they do, yes.
Right. Another thing I want to say is this. You know, our local law enforcement has been stiffed. About $500 million in COP grants have been taken out of the budget. Those really help us in Burlington. They help us in Rutland.
They do.
They really are important.
That's correct.
And why in the world would we be cutting those COP grants when we need that local law enforcement, in part to partner with you?
Well, I think
you support that?
I think you're speaking to the Department of Justice grants, which I don't adjudicate, but also Vermont, just like every other state, has received a plus-up of FBI personnel.
Well, I'll tell you, that's not what we're seeing.
That's not true
at
all,
all, my understanding is that there's a requisition or...
Listen, Cupcake, I fucking live here. You want to question my journalistic integrity? Because we are short by about 20%, so don't even fucking go there. I confirm that, by the way, with Senator Welch's office. So don't go there.
An effort to get another plane for the FBI that would cost about $72 million. Is that right?
That's inaccurate. The FBI, because the jet, as you call it, is not my jet. We use it for operational needs. We use it for FTOX. We use it for HRT.
But that's the one you fly in, right?
We have multiple fixed wing assets, and one of them is on a wildly expensive lease that I deemed a waste of money, and I'm looking for a replacement in which the government can procure assets permanently.
Well, but I would welcome you submitting to this committee the cost information about the jets that are under consideration. And according to our research, the specifications that are included in this request.
So, day 66 of the Trump administration, breaking the law in violation of not releasing the Trump files, the FBI director flat out fucking lying to the American people, caught on video. This is how stupid they are. Well, this is how stupid they think their supporters are. He's in the locker room, basically jumping off tables, chugging beers with the American hockey team, contradicting himself in his bullshit fucking hypocrisy. These flights to Italy, I've got some statements. This is wild, the things that they've attempted to try to gaslight the American public. The travel was not a personal or leisure trip, is what the FBI said, but part of an official duties planned months in advance. The itinerary reportedly included meetings with Italian law enforcement officials and security partners related to the Olympics and security efforts. Notice we have no video of that. None. An FBI spokesperson, often identified as Assistant Director Ben Williamson, has stated the trip was planned well before and that it included official engagements with Italian police, FBI legal staff, and the U.S. ambassador to Italy. As follow-ups to previous law enforcement roundtable events, the Bureau emphasized that the official role at the Olympics includes involvement in security planning for U.S. athletes and other Americans attending the games. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, not investigating predators, protecting the global P3DO ring that includes a certain person who sits behind the Resolute desk, allegedly. But it's fine to spend taxpayer dollars. That trip cost $75,000. Nothing to see here, though, right? Drop in the hat? Okay, no problem. The Bureau emphasized that the official role at the Olympics includes involvement in security planning for the U.S. athletes and other Americans attending the games. This is from AP. Reiterating that the Olympics travel was not personal, despite Patel being seen attending men's hockey games. Not just attending men's hockey games. Let's be very, very clear. He's in the locker room chugging beers. Okay? Not just attending. If that's not a personal trip, what would you call that? Dropping F-bombs? He put the president on the phone at one point. He's standing there amidst the celebration, it's just fucking, it's despicable. I mean, give me a fucking break, right? If you're on the taxpayer dime, you're sitting there chugging beers? Come on. Clarifying that while he attended sport events, there was official meetings tied to law enforcement cooperation and security efforts. While some outlets and critics have questioned the optics, the Bureau has not retracted its statements describing the trip as official business. Okay, these are some quotes. The FBI denied the trip was for personal reasons. When I read this, you can tell me they denied that the trip was for personal reasons. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, day 66 of breaking the law, covering for predators. They're telling you, MAGA, Trump voters, anybody else, we're telling you that this is not a personal trip. Okay. Here's the quote. Let's see. The FBI denied the trip was for personal reasons, with spokesperson Ben Williamson saying that reporting that called it personal was designed to mislead. So people calling it a personal trip, we're the ones that are misleading people? Okay. The FBI maintained that the trip was planned months in advance and included official business, not a personal vacation. Continue to look at that picture. Williamson also reiterated the FBI has a major role in Olympics security. I couldn't find any. I couldn't find any specific major role. It's not uncommon for security personnel to represent the United States abroad when we have athletes, like an Olympic delegation, for example. But I could find nothing. Williamson also reiterated the FBI has a major role in Olympic security and that Patel's itinerary included official meetings with Italian law enforcement and with the U.S. ambassador, underscoring that the trip was not about attending hockey games. Patel, the trip, quote, this is from official FBI communication. The trip was planned months ago and is not a personal trip. And the FBI's role in the Olympics includes security coordination and law enforcement engagement with international partners. This is the quote from Cash himself. Yes, I love America and was extremely humbled when my friends, the newly minted gold medal winners on Team USA, invited me into the locker room to celebrate this historic moment. Greatest country on earth and greatest sport on earth. In that same social media post, he reinforced that his presence was not leisure. He emphasized the trip was not a personal vacation, but part of official business planned months earlier, including meetings related to Olympic security with Italian authorities and U.S. officials. So anybody who works for a company, an organization, and you travel. So if the FBI director can say, this is personal business, then Jell-O shots should go on your next expense report. Personal business, right? Lemon drops, Jell-O shots, sushi boats, whatever it might be, top shelf champagne, whatever it might be. If that's official business, then okay. I've traveled a lot. I mean, I've been to Asia, I've been all across the country, I've been to Europe, been to South America for business, and we had discretion as to how we could spend our money. We could take people out to dinner, but we could not include alcohol for one. Maybe if you're celebrating something, you might be able to get away with a bottle of wine or something like that. But this is official business? Okay. The FBI's official line is that Patel's travel to Italy was planned well in advance and included official duties such as security coordination meetings with international law enforcement partners, not a personal trip to watch Olympic hockey. Patel himself acknowledged the celebratory moment, but framed his presence as honoring U.S. athletic achievement, not a vacation detached from work obligations. The quote, for the very concerned media, it's the media's fault, everybody, just so you know. For the very concerned media, yes, I love America and was extremely humbled when my friends, the newly minted gold medal winners on Team USA, invited me into the locker room to celebrate this historic moment with the boys. Greatest country on earth and greatest sport on earth. He also described part of the purpose of his trip. The Milan Joint Operations Center is focused on protecting the U.S. athletes. 250,000 U.S. citizens who travel to Milan for the games, as well as the private sector companies we share information with every day. Nearly 100 U.S. government personnel have been surged to support the Olympics since the start of 2026, with lessons we'll take into the FIFA World Cup later this month. These quotes are Patel's own words addressing criticism of his presence at the celebration and affirming that his travel included official security engagements tied to the Olympics. Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. I really appreciate that. As we continue to protect predators, day 66, as we continue to see, by the way, the ACA subsidies, they ain't coming back. Medicaid, Medicare programs being cut. Rural hospitals going to be closed. Tariffs kicking our ass. The economic numbers in the shitter. We're going to talk about the tariffs. We're going to talk about the lies being told again. But it's fine for the FBI director to be chugging beers in the locker room, trying to write it off as official business. And there will not be a peep from the right. Not be a fucking peep. On that point, I've mentioned to you guys before that I'm sort of taking a little bit of a break from going on right-wing panels. It's not good for my mental health, to be perfectly honest. There's always an intention because I just can't stand misinformation. So if I'm working and I'll be scrolling through a live and I'll listen to something and I'm like, fuck, I got to address that. It's just not good for my mental health. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned to you that I was in a live with someone and they said that food wasn't a right? And that really hit me. It was emotional. I could not believe that we had fallen that far for somebody to say that food isn't a right. Well, it came up again over the weekend. I heard somebody else in. So I don't go to those spaces anymore. But what I've noticed, if you'll scroll through and you'll listen, they're desperate. Because at this point, there's nothing left for the Trump supporters to defend. I mean, they'll try. But here's another example. You talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, right? You talk about that. You talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, and you've got the FBI director, $75,000 of taxpayer dollars to go and chug beers with the USA hockey team. Can you imagine? If that was an official from the Biden administration, what we'd be talking about? See, this is my point. See, here you go. This is what I'm talking about. You see what I mean? Is food on the Bill of Rights? No, it's not. I just want people to think about that for a second. Okay? Now, it's very possible that this is just a troll because they've shown up a lot lately. But there are people that actually think that way, right? Well, food isn't in the Bill of Rights. But you know what is? General welfare. That's in the preamble to the Constitution. You probably forgot about that, though. Provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. What side of this what side of history do you wish to be remembered as? Someone who said, food isn't in the Bill of Rights, so no, it's not. Or someone who says, oh, I don't know, food should be a basic fucking right. This is where we sit. This is why I don't bother with some of these spaces anymore. My point is there's not much left for them to hold on to, so they're very, very, very angry, and they're lashing out, which tells me many, many things. Because first of all, there's no substance to their debates anymore. Not that there ever was, but at least you could make some suggestions or some predictions as to how you think things would go. Well, we've got data on the tariffs now. We've got data on the trade deficit. All these things. And none of it lines up with what they were promised. So they're getting angry. They're getting frustrated. They're lashing out. The death threats that I normally get have increased. Things like that. Accusations being made against some of the creators that we all know and respect. Because that's what's left. Well, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that's in the Declaration of Independence. We're talking about the Constitution. So that provide the general welfare. Let me just real quick. I think I pulled this up before. Yeah. General welfare refers to the overall well-being, health, safety, and prosperity of all people within a community or nation. The concept of general welfare is a guiding principle in government and law, emphasizing policies and actions that benefit the public collectively rather than specific individuals or groups. It is mentioned in the preamble and in the taxing and spending clauses of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which empowers Congress to collect taxes, allocate funds for programs that serve the common good. This includes initiatives in public health, infrastructure, education, social services, all aimed at improving the overall quality of life for citizens. Includes initiatives in public health. Last time I checked, you're not exactly going to be very healthy if you can't fucking eat. So, this is where we sit. A reminder again, I was right about everything. And she was. Okay, so anyway, cash, good luck explaining this one. So we've reached the point now where it's every single day you work, you eat. So children, Artie, children don't work. Should they not eat? This absolutely blows me away. Like the pro-life crowd, right? The pro-life crowd genuinely thinks that food isn't a right. Friends, in the do something spirit, right? We always talk about the little things that we can do every single day. And this was a great suggestion that came in a few weeks ago, and I love it. On your way out in the morning, make an extra sandwich or two. Have it in your vehicle with you. If you're driving through a community or wherever it might be, and you identify a houseless individual, walk up to them and give them the sandwich that you made. Volunteer in food banks. Here's a little tip, because I've done a lot of work with food banks over the years. Always call them in advance to find out what they may be short of. I can tell you they're always going to be on the lookout for things that are not food related, menstrual products, socks, things along those lines. Always call in advance, because what they will do is say, listen, we don't need any more pasta, but we know this food bank run by this local organization that might. They work with you. So things like that. Have socks in your car, right? Water, all those kinds of things that apparently are just a bridge too far. So $75,000 is totally okay with the FBI director to go chug beers, but God forbid, a $75,000 grant to a rural school so the kids could eat? That's probably a bridge too far, right? Yeah, probably. I don't think I have anything else on this story. Well, actually, I'm not quite done yet. He being Patel, flew on a $60 million FBI jet to see his country singer girlfriend Alex Wilkins perform the national anthem at a wrestling event in Pennsylvania. Critics noted this was personal, despite being on an FBI aircraft. House Democrats and other oversight voices pointed out reports that he also used government planes for a luxury hunting trip and a golfing trip in Scotland, again raising questions about timing. Senator Peter Walsh grilled him over UFC fights, NHL games, etc., 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 etc. Nothing to see here, though. Totally fine. And there are people in this chat right now saying food isn't a fucking right. What the hell is the matter with you people? Okay. He's living like a celebrity. That's exactly what it is. He doesn't take his job seriously. Day 66 of the Department of Justice and the Trump administration breaking the law, violating the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Don't forget, they keep moving the goalposts, like we told you, every single day when new information comes out, the Trump files, exactly. Every single day when new information comes out, what do we see? The goalpost being moved. Don't forget, like, the 2020 election was a Democratic hoax. It wasn't. January 6th was a Democratic hoax. It wasn't. The Epstein Files, a Democratic hoax. It wasn't. So when you hear the words Democratic hoax, you know what that means. You know it means that they are guilty as fucking sin. Election fraud? Really? Hey, MAGA, do you know what happened in Georgia recently, by the way? Are you aware of that? Turns out there was actually voter fraud in Georgia. The State Board of Elections found that Elon Musk's PAC sent pre-filled ballot applications. What do you know? If Donald Trump's administration really wants to find evidence of foreign interference in Georgia's elections, then they need to look no further than the president's old friend Elon and his shady super PAC. Members of the Georgia State Elections Board voted last week to issue a formal letter of reprimand, like that's going to fucking matter, to Musk's America PAC over the billionaire technocrat's illegal scheme to get Trump elected. Georgia, a key battleground state in 2024, was the target of aggressive campaigning by Trump's campaign. In October of 2024, the Georgia Secretary of State's state's office launched an investigation after receiving numerous reports from residents across several counties saying they'd received partially pre-filled absentee applications from Musk's America PAC, according to John Furvier, his state elections board chairperson. There was evidence to suggest America PAC had violated a state law that prohibits any person or entity other than an authorized relative to send an elector an absentee ballot application pre-filled with the elector's required information, according to Janice Johnson, the SEB's vice chairperson. America PAC has also failed to display in a conspicuous location that this was not an official government publication, was not approved by the government, and was not a ballot. The board swiftly voted to issue a letter of reprimand to America PAC. This letter comes weeks after Trump suggested that his director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was spotted lurking at a federal raid at the election office in Fulton County, Georgia, because she was there investigating foreign interference in elections. So, a study done by numerous election integrity firms, departments of justice, DHS, the incidences of fraud in voting, this goes back to the SAVE Act, are so fucking minuscule. So minuscule. I know what the Christian nationalists and the white supremacists want to do. They want to blame it on everybody, women, brown people, black people, the immigrant community, marginalized groups across the board. And lo and behold, the fucking billionaires are the ones that are cheating. Shocker, said no one ever. But I'm sure we'll find some way of twisting. Let's see how this would go. What the right will probably say is something like this. What Elon was doing was just testing the system. Okay. No problem. No, nothing to see here. No problem at all. Okay. All right, I want to talk about the situation in Mexico, because it's pretty bad down there. Hang on a second. Do I have it? Yeah. In case you haven't been paying attention to. By the way, friends, everybody keep tapping and sharing, please. Actually, let me cover the tariff situation first, because that's a little bit more complicated, and I'm going to have to spend a little more time on it, but I will. Let me just check over here real quick. Let's see. Tamisha, thank you very much for your kind contribution. I appreciate you. Crystal, thank you so very, very much. Crystal, I appreciate you for your travel, and thank you for all you do. Thank you, Crystal. It's very kind of you. And then Amy has started the Dollar Train. I believe in you, Steve, and I believe in your mission. Thank you so much. I appreciate you very, very much. The Dollar Train today would probably put us over 3K, if that's possible. I appreciate you all very, very much. All right, you've probably seen some of the video from the situation in Puerto Vallarta in particular, but violence and riots have erupted across Mexico. This is from AP. Violence and riots have erupted across Mexico following the death of Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, the powerful leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG. Mexican security forces unalived El Mencho in a military operation in Jalisco with U.S. intelligence support, dismantling one of the country's most powerful cartel leaderships. His death has triggered a wave of retaliation and chaos, including blockades, burning vehicles, gunfire, and violent clashes in multiple states across the country. At least 9 to 14 states, Mexican states, have seen incidences including road blockages, fires, clashes involving suspected cartel members. Jalisco, the base of the CJNG, has seen some of the most intense violence and code red alerts, especially in Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta. Cities are reporting blocked highways, burning vehicles, and halted public services. Travel disruption, flights in and out of Puerto Vallarta have been delayed or canceled, and authorities have advised residents, including U.S. citizens, to shelter in place where unrest is ongoing. Schools and public events have been suspended or canceled. In several areas, due to security concerns, Mexico's federal and state governments have deployed security forces nationwide to combat the unrest and dismantle blockades. According to official security reports, more than 250 roadblocks in 20 states were identified. After the operation, most have since been cleared. The government is also maintaining heightened operations to prevent further violence and disruption. And analysts warn that the unaliving of a Mencho is a major strike against cartel leadership. It also risks power struggles among criminal groups that could extend violence in coming days and weeks. The unrest comes as Mexico prepares to host the 2026 FIFA World Cup, raising concerns about security in key cities. And as we've seen in the past, when countries in south of our border, Mexico, into Central America and South America, when they become destabilized, it becomes a humanitarian catastrophe. And we see an influx of migration to our southern border. So I would not be surprised if we didn't see something like that. But, anyway, good times. You there, Sheila? You might have timed out, Fred. If you want to come back up, just request again, and I can bring you right back up. It's not good, no love lost for our cartel leader to have lost his life. Of course, we know the damage they do, but it's anytime there's that amount of unrest, right? It creates problems, and we should be very mindful of that. Once I just said this, that there's destabilization in these countries south of our border, it always leads to a humanitarian crisis, and I would expect more of it. It's unfortunate. So we'll be watching that. All right, let's get into the tariff situation. Let me first start by the president's angry. And again, this goes to the point about how Kamala was right about everything, because she talked about his economic plan. She talked about what tariffs were going to do. She talked about destabilizing NATO. She talked about all of these things, and she was right about all of it. She was right about all of it. And I just want people to imagine for a second. I don't mean to make anybody sad, right? I just want people to imagine where we'd be if Madam VP was Madam President, right? On True Social, this was just a little while ago. Hang on a second.
The Supreme Court will be using lowercase letters for a while based on a complete lack of respect of the United States. Accidentally and unwittingly gave me, as president, far more powers and strength than I had prior to their ridiculous, dumb, and very internationally divisive ruling. For one thing, I can use licenses to do absolutely terrible things to foreign countries, especially those countries that have been ripping us off for many decades.
Just want to pause there for a second. Don't forget, tariffs were levied against our allies as well. So that statement says, I can use licenses to do absolutely terrible things to foreign countries. Okay.
For many decades, but incomprehensibly, according to the ruling, can't charge them a license fee. But all licenses charge fees. Why can't the United States do so? You do a license to get a fee. The opinion doesn't explain that, but I know the answer. The court has also approved all other tariffs, of which there are many, and they can all be used in a much more powerful and obnoxious way with legal certainty than the tariffs as initially used. Our incompetent Supreme Court did a great job for the wrong people, and for that, they should be ashamed of themselves. But not the great three. The next thing you know, they'll rule in favor of China and others who are making an absolute fortune on birthright citizenship by saying the 14th Amendment was not written to take care of the babies of slaves, which it was, as proven by the exact timing of its construction, filing, and ratification, which perfectly coincided with the end of the Civil War. How much better can you do that? But this Supreme Court will find a way to come to the wrong conclusion, one that again will make China and various other nations happy and rich. Let our Supreme Court keep making decisions that are so bad and delirious to the future of our nation. I have a job to do. Make America great again. President Donald J. Trump.
So what Oh, Toodle, I totally agree. I mean, what was any of that? My guy, Booby, two of your hand-picked justices said, yeah, no. Nope. No. So let's get into it a little bit, shall we? There's going to be some staggering. I did this research. I was like, holy fuck, I had no idea. All right. So the ruling, in case you don't know, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled. Everybody keep tapping and sharing, please. I really appreciate you all. Let me update this. I got to do math in my head. What's 26? 38. Okay. The U.S. Supreme Court strikes down key Trump tariffs. As we've been discussing, right? The blanket tariffs, the Liberation Day tariffs, thank you. The Liberation Day tariffs came from what's was referred to as IEPA, International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which in the Constitution, if there's justification for the president using this power, has to be very specific, that it's got to be an international economic emergency. The Supreme Court said, no. U.S. Supreme Court ruled that most of President Trump's broad global tariffs are illegal, saying he lacked the authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. This is from Reuters. This invalidates tariffs covering a large share of the world. As a result, U.S. customers will stop collecting those tariffs, raising uncertainty about potential refunds to businesses that already paid them. So this is the part that's going to be interesting, complicated. We're going to get into that in a little bit this morning, because I'm trying to figure out how it's going to make sense. Because do you think these corporations are going to lower their prices? Two chances, slim and none. Okay. As a result, U.S. Customs will stop collecting those tariffs, which are a tax. So in the ruling, MAGA, just so you know, U.S. Customs. So something is made over here, blah, 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 it's shipped, and then it lands here, blah, 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 and then U.S. Customs then collects that fee, which would mean that we pay the tariff. Now, I think what a lot of our friends on the right have forgotten is that, no, not every single dollar of tariffs has been passed down to the consumer, but it still impacts American businesses, small businesses in particular. So we already know cost of goods are gone up in certain sectors. Coffee's a big one, beef, food in general, energy across the board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to sneeze. Sorry, my apologies. We already know that's happening. Thank you. We already know that that's happening. So do we expect them? Do you think, gosh, I think about corporations and billionaires in the Fortune 100. I just think, thank you guys. I just think of them as the most altruistic and philanthropic people ever. Of course they're gonna lower their prices. Of course they are. Yeah, right. Got it. In response to the ruling, the White House has announced a new global tariff regime. At first, 10%, then a 15% across-the-board tariff under Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. I'm going to go through that with you guys in just a second, because I didn't know all the nuances to the various the levers that the president may or may not have. It's still debatable. U.S. Trade Rep Jameson Greer insists the policy itself hasn't changed, even if the legal basis has. And the administration is exploring tariff tools also under Section 302 and 232. So let's break those down first. So Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974, what it actually does. I'll try to make this not so boring, because it can be boring. So I tried to summarize it as best I could for you. Section 122, 19 U.S.C. 2132 is where you can find it. Gives the president temporary authority to impose across-the-board import restrictions to deal with a serious balance of payments problems or a sharp decline in the U.S. dollar. It is rarely used and far narrower than some of the other trade authorities like 232 and 301. We'll get into those in just a minute. What triggers Section 122? The president may act if the U.S. has a large and serious balance of payment deficits. We'll talk about the trade deficit in just a minute. I'll pause there briefly because I always think about the country of Madagascar. If you were to walk over to your cabinet, your cupboard, whatever you call it, your spice rack, and you were to grab your bottle of vanilla, because who doesn't have vanilla in their spice cabinet, and you were to look in the back, I pretty much would guarantee you that 99 out of 100 of you would see a product of Madagascar. The best vanilla in the world comes from Madagascar. We buy a shit ton of vanilla from Madagascar, right? So Madagascar is also a very poor country. There's no possible way that Madagascar could ever purchase an equal amount of American products. Thus, we have a trade deficit with them. Okay? Thus, we have a trade deficit with them. It's impossible. It's impossible to actually balance that, right? MAGA buys imitation vanilla. They probably do. Good call. That is one example. And there are dozens of other examples like that. What the Trump administration has been able to do is to convince people that trade deficits are this horrible thing. Now, in some areas, sure. That's why you use targeted tariffs to protect certain industries. But a trade deficit is not always a bad thing. It just depends on the situation, right? So again, vanilla is the perfect example. I would seriously, if you go look right now, grab your vanilla. You're talking to me. You're walking across the kitchen. You're barefoot, whatever that might be. The heat's on. You've got all your supplies. You've got your bread. You've got your milk. You got your toilet paper. You grab your vanilla. You look in the back. It's going to probably say Madagascar. I digress. The president may use Section 122 if the U.S. has large and serious balance of payment deficits, or there is a significant and rapid decline in the dollar's value, and the immediate action is considered necessary to stabilize the situation. This authority was created in the 1970s when currency instability and trade deficits were major concerns. What it allows, under Section 122, the president may impose temporary import surcharges, tariffs, or impose temporary quantitative restrictions, quotas. However, there are strict limits. They are: no, can't go beyond 15%. The maximum duration is 150 days. After 150 days, the president must end the action or seek congressional approval to continue. This makes Section 122 a short-term emergency tool, not a long-term trade war mechanism. So think about it. 150 days, so 5 months. What's the date? February 23rd. So that brings us to what? 5 months from today would February, July, right? July would be the first chance, if this is the one that they use, would be the first chance for Congress to have to review this. Nobody in Congress is going to extend these tariffs. They can't. They know they fucking can't because of the economic conditions. So yeah, not going to happen. Section 122 is unusual because it allows broad tariffs without a country-specific finding, but only very temporarily. Section 122 has almost never been used in modern times. Presidents have preferred Section 232 for steel and aluminum, Section 301 for China tariffs, or negotiated trade agreements. Its 15% cap and 150-day limit make it a blunt but short-lived instrument. So what's 301 and 302? Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. Section 301 allows the U.S. to respond to unfair trade practices such as intellectual property theft, vanilla, okay, forced technology transfers, okay, discriminatory trade barriers, subsidies that harm U.S. industries. It is primarily a retaliatory tool. Say that 3 times fast. U.S. Trade Rep USTR investigates and recommends actions. The president then authorizes tariffs or other penalties. It allows tariffs on specific countries or products. Broad tariffs lists can cover hundreds of billions of imports. No fixed time limit, meaning it can't be used like a broad brushstroke. The 2018-2019 China tariffs were imposed under Section 301 after an investigation into China's technology transfer policies. Country-specific are the key features. Country-specific, based on an investigation, can last indefinitely and then often triggers retaliation. And then Section 232 is another element they're going to try to use. This is from the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. For those of you following along at home, Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act allows tariffs if imports threaten U.S. national security. That's how they try to sell the American public on IEEPA, claiming that it's a national security threat. Now, intellectual property, you could probably make an argument that that's a national security threat. But don't you find it interesting that during the Biden administration, they wanted to limit the sale of NVIDIA chips and some of the most sophisticated AI technology to actors like UAE, Qatar, for example, because they knew that those two countries specifically had relationships with China. So the Biden administration did all they could to stop that from happening. What does the Trump administration do? They come in and say, yeah, no problem. We'll take your money. Yeah, we'll take your money. No big deal. So they created the national security threat, potentially. What it allows, tariffs, it allows imports if it threatens U.S. national security. The Department of Commerce, Howard Nutlick, we're going to talk about him in just a minute because you guys are going to be like, what the fuck? And I mentioned this briefly last week. You'd be shocked to know that a billionaire would benefit from the Supreme Court ruling, right? Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. It allows tariffs, it allows quotas, there's no time limit, and then it's broad presidential discretion. The 2018 steel and aluminum tariffs were imposed under Section 232. If its national security justification can apply globally or selectively, it's less structured than Section 301, and courts historically have deferred heavily to the president. So neither one of these are anything close to what the broad Liberation Day tariffs presented to us. None of it. All right. We're going to get into the trade deficit piece in a minute because I think it's amazing that what they sold you again is a bill of goods that didn't apply. AS, how are you today? Hello? AS? Are you there? AS? Progressive in your pocket. All right. So let's then talk about the trade deficit. Don't forget, one of the promises that were made to you, to all of us, was because the trade deficit, we are getting ripped off, right? Let me just do this real quick. Before I get into that, I was going to take a quick break. I just got to deal with one thing real quick before the daughter leaves. Hang tight. I'll be right back.
End up leaning. You don't need a cape just to help someone win. Do something simple, do something true. Make a sandwich for a friend, hold the door for someone too. Facts still matter, it starts with you. Check on your neighbor, share what you can do. One small action turns into a wave. Do something today, be the change that you crave. Facts still matter, it starts with you. Facts still matter, it starts with you.
So it's vacation week. It's vacation week up here. We have our vacation is usually the first couple of days of March because next Tuesday is town meeting day in Vermont, right? And I'll be there. I might even try. I'm not sure. I put the request in to see if I can stream it live. I haven't heard back yet, but I might do that. Anyway, this is vacation week. There's a ton of fucking snow. The resorts are packed. My daughter just started. She picked up some server shifts, and she's like, hey, she's making some really good money. And as a soon-to-be college student, it's good. So she's working like a double today. So sorry, I digress. But anyway, okay. So the argument was that there was this massive trade deficit, and yes, we have a trade deficit. But the intention of the tariffs were, one, to close the trade deficit, and the lies that the president, thanks, Ash, the lies that the president told us were that the tariffs were going to make our lives better. U.S. goods, and this is from December of 2025. The U.S. goods and services trade deficit was $70.3 billion in December. This means imports, pay attention, MAGA, imports exceeded exports by this amount. Exports were 287 billion and imports were 357 billion. So basic maths would tell us that you were lied to. Shocker. Over the entire year of 2025, the U.S. trade deficit, goods and services combined, was approximately $901.5 billion, slightly smaller than 24. We'll get into that in a second, but still among the largest on record. The goods trade deficit alone reached a record high of around $1.24 trillion in 2025, reflecting a large gap in physical goods trade, even as the service sector runs a surplus. This is from Bloomberg. By the way, if those of you who are watching us on YouTube and Twitch, thank you all so much. The streams are going to come down for the rest of the day today. We're making some changes technically. We'll be back on YouTube and on Twitch tomorrow. Just wanted to let you know that in case, but you can stay here and join us here if you'd like. Just wanted to give you that heads up. The U.S. continues to import more than it exports, running a significant trade deficit imbalance with the rest of the world. Pardon me. The monthly deficit figures fluctuates from month to month, while the national total reflects long-term patterns. So let's talk about the trade deficit, shall we? So we've watched the trade deficit kind of fluctuate. Going back to 2019, it was $576 billion. In 2020, it was $626 billion. In 2021, it was $860 billion. 2022, $958. It dropped in 2023, $784 billion. That's probably a lag from, this is from Department of Labor, Bureau of Economic Conditions, and from Macro Trends. That makes sense. 2023, still recovering from C-19. Supply chains are all over the map. That makes sense. It dropped. In 2024, it went to $918 billion, which was second most ever. And then 2025, it sits now at $901 billion. So what's that a difference of? $16 billion on a nearly $1 trillion, deficit. So okay, sure, it went down. Take the win. Here's the problem, though. When you get into and I'm not an economist, but I can only speak to this on what we know and what's the macro level, and we can talk more specifically from an industry perspective. But here's where it gets interesting. The U.S. has run a substantial trade deficit in goods and services for decades. Recent peaks in 2022, the deficit approached around $958 billion in 2022 before declining again in 2023. From 24 to 25, after rising again in 24, the deficit slightly narrowed last year to around $901 billion, yet remains among the largest on record. 2020 pandemic dip, the deficit shrank in 2020, partly due to depressed global trade during C-19. The U.S. has run a trade deficit most years since the 1970s, driven by strong consumer demand for imports and structural factors in the global economy. In recent years, goods deficits have grown especially large, even as the services surplus partially offsets them. So now let's talk about the statements that the president has made, because that's what this comes down to, right? Trump has repeatedly framed the U.S. trade deficit as a problem of unfair trade exploitation by other countries. He has said the U.S. can't allow that to continue and has linked trade deficits to broader economic weakness, including job losses and manufacturing decline. We lost jobs, 95,000. Somebody can fact check me on that. I think it's between 90 and 100,000 manufacturing jobs. We've seen some of the biggest restrictions and recessions in employment that we've seen in decades. And if tariffs were supposed to reduce the deficit to give us a surplus, we'll get into more of some of the specific quotes in a second, and bring jobs back, none of those things happened. Which, if we go back to the start of the show, and I told you how what we're seeing from the right now is just constant, they're in massive defense mode because they can't step away from anything, because their entire, the list of promises made and promises broken just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Tariffs were supposed to bring back jobs. It didn't. Tariffs were supposed to lower your costs. Sam, I just did. Yes, I literally just made that announcement. Again, guys, just real quick, the YouTube stream and the Twitch stream are going to be ending like momentarily. Just want to let you know. Promises, 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 promises. One after another. Here we sit, okay? He said the U.S. can't allow that to continue and has linked trade deficits to broader economic weakness, including job losses and manufacturing decline. A central theme of Trump's recent economic, this is from the White House, a central theme of Trump's recent economic policy has been imposing wide-ranging tariffs. You're good, no sweat. Hearts in the chat for Sam for doing all that she does for us every single day. And my